An anthology about the bad, the short-lived, and the forgotten shows and events in television history. This is It Was a Thing on TV.
Punisher! Control!
Harry, before I change my mind!
I give you Super Train.
Episode 498, submission number 247, Alien Nation. Alien Nation aired on Fox from September 18th, 1989 to May 7th, 1990 for a full season of 22 episodes. 1990, a Mojave Desert. An unidentified flying object finds its way to Earth, stranding 250,000 Tanktonese newcomers in Los Angeles, almost doubling the population seemingly overnight. These newcomers have no problem adapting to their new environment. They've learned the language, they've assimilated, they've taken jobs, and they've contributed to society. What are Americans going to do with aliens in America? How do we react to all of this? These questions are explored on this show. That was, for my money, miles ahead of its time. But before we talk about that show, we need to talk about a movie that came out a year earlier. That would be the Rockne S.O. Bannon-penned film Alien Nation, which sees a similar premise and features James Caan as a human detective and Mandy Patinkin as his alien partner. It was sort of a neo-noir buddy cop film with one human and one alien. The human, Matt Sykes, is a veteran police investigator, and the alien, Sam Francisco, is the first detective to come from the newcomer race. Aside from that, it was just your standard police procedural. There was a bit of drama that has to do with the single Matt Sykes and the family man Sam Francisco, who, for some reason, Sykes always calls George. We'll come back to that.
Maybe watch that Looney Tunes episode with the Abominable Snowman. I will name him George and I will hug him and squeeze him.
Fox produced the movie, distributed it theatrically, and it made over $32 million against a budget of $16 million. You could say it was a bit of a success. Interesting thing that this happens as a spec script that ultimately wouldn't have gotten into the hands of the Fox system were it not for one Gail Ann Hurd, famous for The Terminator. She and her director of development, Ellen Collette, had the same initial response, seeing the script as a real page-turner. What really interested her about the film's story was the whole approach to the immigrant setting and the extrapolation of that to a science fiction setting, because you can substitute aliens or androids for anything and still tell a morality play. Just look at Star Trek. Fast forward a year, and Fox was looking, as it was expanding into Mondays for the first time, for something, anything, to air on its schedule. Because up until this point, it was just Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah, because as we pointed out in some previous Fox episodes we've done from around this time, originally Fox was Fox Weekend Television.
What could they have to join the ranks of 21 Jump Street, Married with Children, The Tracy Ullman Show, and other stuff? In the fall of 1989, as Fox began plotting for Monday nights, they looked at the schedule and put 21 Jump Street on at 8 o'clock. But what would be on at 9 o'clock? Enter noted science fiction scribe Kenneth Johnson, known for his work on The $6 Million Man, V, and The Incredible Hulk. He had absolutely no interest in bringing Alien Nation to television, but he agreed to watch the film, which ultimately left him unimpressed except for one scene when the newcomer, George, or Sam, leaves his suburban wife and child and goes to work. He went back to the network with this pitch in mind, a science fiction version of Lethal Weapon, selling them on a different concept of social commentary about what happens when a new minority appears overnight. He wanted this to be more akin to In the Heat of the Night and less akin to 48 Hours. Fox decided to go with it, but there was some changes made from the film. For one, he was not Sam Francisco in the TV show. He was George Francisco, and there's an interesting story about why everybody kept calling him George. Because, according to Word of God, originally they wanted to name the character of Sam Francisco George Jetson.
Yeah, I don't think Hanna and Barbera are not going to be thrilled with that.
They said no. George Jetson is out, and Sam Francisco was in, but in the TV show, they sort of made a compromise, naming him George Francisco by the Human Immigration Authorities of Los Angeles, who, if you remember the movie, they got bored of processing 250,000 alien refugees. So they just got creative with the names, which is why you see an alien named, I kid you not, Albert Einstein.
What?
So let's go over all of the humans, aliens, and other that appeared in this adaptation. Matthew Sykes, the detective that was played by James Caan in the movie, is played by Gary Graham, who you would probably remember from episodes of Enterprise and the movie Robot Jocks, which was basically Pacific Rim 30 years too early. He passed away earlier this year.
Oh.
His partner, George Francisco, is played by Eric Pierpoint, who had experience from previous shows Fame and Hot Pursuit. George's wife, Susan, is played by Michelle Scarabelli, who was in all 24 episodes of the final season of Airwolf as Joe Santini, I believe the daughter of Ernest Borgnine's character, Dominic Santini.
Oh, wait a second. We mentioned Ernest Borgnine. Mike,
Yeah.
we mentioned Ernest Borgnine. You know what we have to put in here?
Do we have to?
Yes.
I masturbate a lot.
You know, J.D. Vance can claim that too, but that would be called cheating on his couch.
Playing eldest son Buck Francisco, George Francisco Jr., if he's ever in trouble, Sean Six. This and all other related indicia is all that he's ever known for. And playing younger daughter Emily Francisco is Lauren Woodland, who nowadays is on Your Mother's Stories. She's spent the last 20 years playing Brittany Hodges on The Young and the Restless.
Which means my mom's probably watches her all the time because she watches Young and the Restless all the damn time.
And then we turn to Matt Sykes' on-again, off-again newcomer girlfriend, Dr. Kathy Frankel, played by Terry Treese, whose best-known credit, I can't believe I get to say it on this podcast, is as a dancer, one of many, in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Wow, we're 498 episodes in. And this is probably the first time ever we've referenced the best little whorehouse in Texas. Of course, it's not quite 198 episodes ago when, for the first time ever on this podcast, I mentioned that I loved Wings, but hey, it's first for everything.
Did Tony Shalhoub ever go to a whorehouse?
That would have been a great episode of Wings. Tim Daly, Steven Weber, and Tony Shalhoub go to a whorehouse.
I think that would have been a better episode of Monk, to be honest. Going to the whorehouse, spraying the sanitizer, get all the germs, maybe throw a drop cloth over the bed. Got to protect himself from those germs, that Monk.
I mentioned this character already on this podcast, but playing Albert Einstein, Jeff Marcus, who is that guy from That Thing, whose last known credit was in 2023's The Color Purple.
The musical version of The Color Purple.
Emily's best friend Jill is played by Molly Morgan, who was only in like half of the episodes, but forms a lot of Emily's sort of ideas about young human students. She was that woman from That Thing. In the role of Captain Byron Grazer, Sykes and Francisco's boss, is Ron Fassler, who played either the voice or the body of Ted Koppel in 2009's Watchmen. And then we have as a character by the name of Burns, Jeff Doucette from Dr. Dolittle, Splash, and Bedazzled, and 10 episodes of Desperate Housewives as Father Crowley.
We have talked about Jeff Doucette plenty on this podcast. He was a regular on Newhart back in the 80s, and we've talked about him on a number of previous installments. By no means is he an unknown.
And rounding out the cast as Sergeant Dobbs, a co-worker of Francisco and Sykes, Freddie Boom Boom Washington himself, Lawrence Hilton Jacobs. We have a whole lot of aliens with advanced intelligence and strength, but no knowledge of what it really means to be human. We find out as we go into the episodes. Episode 1. The Pilot. The Francisco family move into a more affluent neighborhood where they are welcomed by some but resented by others. The youngest daughter, Emily, attempts to go to her new school but is blocked by protesters on her first day. Sykes and George arrives, and Sykes compares newcomers to other disenfranchised minority groups. Shamed, the group disperses and Emily enters her school. Although she does make some friends, there is also resentment, especially from a boy in a wheelchair. In the meantime, a group of human purists create a giant insect costume and use it to scare people into believing that this is what all newcomers will become. Although Sykes stuck up for the young newcomer, he's still unsure about them, even more so when a newcomer, Kathy, moves into the apartment next door. The Francisco's teenage son, Buck, joins a gang of other newcomers, and they end up having a fight with a gang of humans, during which Buck shoots a human boy. During the fight, Buck gets a substance on his jacket, which comes off onto his mother's skin and creates an infection which she ignores. George revisits the car that Sykes' first partner, Tubbs, was shot in, while hiding behind, and finds a second bullet hole. This leads them back to Officer Maria Puente in their precinct, who is in collusion with the newcomers' masters, the Overseers, something that Tubbs had found out, forcing her to shoot him. We have newcomers, Overseers, and the Overseers want to take the newcomers back to Tinkton, where they will continue to live in abject slavery. Episode 2. Fountain of Youth. Sykes' issues with aging are intensified when he learns that the newcomer lifespan is almost twice that of humans. The death of a police officer during surgery raises questions about the hospital run by Sykes' old school friend. After passing out at a party, Sykes finds out that he has been operated on and an alien gland implanted. Although feeling better than he's done in years, Sykes is horrified to learn why and is determined to take the people responsible down. Couple of big names in this episode. We have as Dr. Jim Tremner, Jason Begay, best known for his roles on Thelma and Louise and G.I. Jane, and now 221 episodes and counting of Chicago PD.
Man, that Chicago franchise, that's like a big money maker for NBC.
Playing Dr. Tamayo, Liz Torres, legendary actress known for Gilmore Girls, The John Larroquette Show. It Was a Thing Hall of Famer in this episode, playing Sophia James, Bonnie Urseth.
Oh, yes, Bonnie Seth. So you know what this means? We get to relive that episode where she was the nun in that one episode of Punky Brewster where they went to the 1984 NLCS. And we learned this immortal line that Henry was at the wedding of Ernie Banks' second cousin. And Henry said to Ernie, "Some party, huh?" And Ernie Banks answered back, "Where's the dip?" And apparently that made them buddies, according to Henry. Mike, do you believe that? Do you believe that that would have made them buddies?
The dip does magical things.
Episode 3, Little Lost Lamb. Sykes tries to help a 16-year-old newcomer prostitute, while George deals with the intrusion of Uncle Moodry and his traditional Tanktonese values. We have 3 sort of Tanktonese prostitutes. Heather McAdam plays Mary Shelley. Shannon Wilcox plays Charlotte Bronte. And Kimberly Cates plays Dallas Fort Worth. I don't know who was in charge of naming everybody, but they got some sick-ass minds. We did talk about Heather McAdam before. She was in 6 episodes of Salvage 1.
Oh, man, Salvage 1. And just remember, the number of aired episodes of Salvage 1 is a crock block.
Episode 4, 15 with Wanda. Sykes and Francisco must each try to deal with their own problem children while keeping a witness safe from a mob hitman. Episode 5, The Takeover. While the city suffers a riot, Francisco and Sykes are left in charge of an almost empty precinct house. Sykes leaves Francisco to help out an old girlfriend, and whilst he is away, a gang of thieves attack the station and kidnap Francisco's wife, Susan. Episode 6, The First Cigar. Francisco comes under the scrutiny of the IRS and wrestles with the ethics of asking for a loan from an influential newcomer that he has helped. Episode 7, Night of the Screams. As Halloween approaches, a series of newcomer murders seems to follow the pattern of a Tanktonese myth. Mitch Pileggi makes an appearance in this episode as Jean-Paul Sartre.
That's probably the best name given to somebody so far in this series.
Episode 8, Contact. The murder of an astronomer leads Sykes and Francisco to the discovery of an extraterrestrial probe passing through the solar system. But is it friend or foe? Meanwhile, Sykes' relations with his newcomer neighbor Kathy develop, and George and Susan discuss having another baby. Interesting thing about having babies, the male gestates for half of the gestation period. You're looking at sort of a seahorse situation.
Oh.
Episode 9, 3 to Tango. A series of murders of Benam, a rare kind of Tanktonese needed for catalyzing reproduction, raises fears that purists are trying to stop the Tanktonese from breeding. Meanwhile, Francisco asks Albert to be the Benam for his and Susan's next child. Episode 10, The Game. The day of descent, the 5th anniversary of the Tanktonese's liberation from slavery with their ship's arrival on Earth, finds Francisco depressed. And a lethal form of gambling from the ship may be continuing on Earth. which is basically Russian roulette, but with acid spokes on a giant steel wheel. Playing a character named Kulak Scarhand, Andreas Katsoulis from Babylon 5. Episode 11, Chains of Love. Sykes and Francisco seek an elusive newcomer woman, all of whose dates wind up dead, while George worries about Susan's fidelity. Playing Roscoe Brennan, a doctor, Teddy Wilson from Sanford Arms. Episode 12, The Red Room. A break-in at a behavioral lab and a series of execution-style murders dredges up buried memories for Francisco. Playing Amanda Q. Russell, Patricia Heaton. She of the Everybody Loves Raymond.
Now, what was the character name?
Amanda Q. Russell.
I thought it was going to be Amanda Huck and Kiss.
Episode 13, The Spirit of 95. As Susan and Buck campaign for Tanktoni's suffrage, bombings and kidnappings are linked to the anti-newcomer Purist organization. Episode 13, Generation to Generation. Several parties claim ownership of a mysterious Tanktoni's box that leaves a trail of death in its wake. Episode 15, Eyewitness News. The line between reality and fantasy blurs when a crossed-video phone line lets a boardroom of executives see a sex actress attacked. George becomes swept up in celebrity when a news crew does a week-long special on him. Playing Renee Longstreet, Angela Bassett. Episode 16, Partners. George is suspended from the force when several grams of drugs go missing on his watch. An old mentor of Sykes returns, and the Francisco family prepares for the ejection when the baby will transfer from Susan to George. Big name in this episode, playing Lawrence Haney, Branscombe Richmond.
From what?
Renegade. He was Bobby Six Killer.
Oh!
Yeah, Greg. He is Bobby Six Killer and Bobby Four Killer, and for like a fleeting second, he was Bobby Five Killer. How dare you ask these stupid questions? He's been on plenty of shows, and we've mentioned this plenty of times. I'm embarrassed by you. Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, Bobby Six Killer. Don't kill me and become Bobby Seven Killer.
I never want to hear crap about Chico having a goldfish memory after that little interlude.
Episode 17, Real Men. Sykes and Francisco investigate possible steroid dealings at a gym, while George must reconcile his and humanity's conceptions of manhood while he is pregnant. Episode 18, Crossing the Line. Francisco worries that Sykes is hiding something when he cancels his vacation plans to help track down a killer. Episode 19, Rebirth. When Sykes comes back after being pronounced dead, he becomes obsessed with finding the newcomer he believes healed him. Episode 20, Gimme Gimme. George investigates the murder of the chief scientist at a company in which he is heavily invested. Buck, inspired by one of his teachers, protests that the workers at the company are being exploited, and Matt sells one of his lottery tickets to Albert, only to see him win. Playing Sleepy Phil, Alan Fudge, we talked about him on Man from Atlantis. Playing Cyril Roman, Armin Shimmerman, Quark himself from the Star Trek universe.
DS9, baby.
Playing a newcomer by the name of Rita Allen Poe.
What?
Rita Allen Poe is her name.
Now, hold on a second. Maybe in this universe, do the Baltimore Ravens have, like, you know how they have Edgar Allan and Poe as their three Raven mascots? Would they have, like, a mascot named Rita?
Beverly Leach, Sergeant Kate Monday from MathNet.
Oh, yes, Kate Monday from MathNet.
Episode 21, The Touch.
You got the touch! You got the power!
Kathy finds a boy she knew from the ship, but suspects he has been abused. The boy, a newcomer by the name of Andron, is played by a very young Jonathan Brandis. And the final episode, Green Eyes. Tensions between partners erupt when Francisco passes the Detective 2 exam and is promoted over Sykes. Matt becomes uncomfortable with his attraction to Kathy, and the mysterious death of a newcomer judge points to a lethal bacterium being used as a biological weapon.
Ooh.
It ends with a cliffhanger, and that's it. That's the show. Fox is at a crucial moment in its history. They needed a hit, and they needed it yesterday. Alien Nation did get respectable ratings and respectable buzz, but ultimately, when the new schedule came out for 1990 and 1991, not only was Alien Nation not on it, but no dramatic series from Fox would have been renewed.
No, they had to make room for stuff like Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
I have a list of all of the shows that were not returning from 1989-1990 on Fox. We have 21 Jump Street, Beyond Tomorrow, Booker, It's Gary Shandling's Show, Glory Days, Malloy, Open House, The Outsiders, The Reporters, The Tracy Ullman Show, and Alien Nation. There is an explanation. The show did get a lot of buzz and a lot of ratings. It was very respectable. However, we have a big cast. We have turning Los Angeles into Los Angeles 5 years into the future, which meant a whole lot of signs in English and in slang. And we have a lot of makeup for the big cast with those bald caps with the giraffe patterns and whatnot. It had a strong fan base and popular demand, but unfortunately, it was not cheap. If you look at the schedule on Fox, here are the returning series. We have America's Most Wanted, Comic Strip Live, Cops, In Living Color, Married with Children, The Simpsons, Totally Hidden Video, and their Fox Night at the Movies. So you have relatively low-budget reality shows, comedy shows, The Simpsons, and the movie block. They invested more time in their new block of series. Only one dramatic series would survive this season. That would be Beverly Hills 90210. Kenneth Johnson and the team of Alien Nation were not ready to let this idea go. They were expected to go into production for a second season of shows. When that fell through, they decided to novelize what would have been the resolution to the cliffhanger as Alien Nation Dark Horizon. It was novelized, it was adapted into a comic book, and it spawned a series of novels. 4 years, a few seasons of The Simpsons, a few seasons of 90210, and several notable acquisitions, including the NFL and a bunch of Japanese superhero shows. Later, with the change of management at Fox, they decided to come back to Alien Nation. Because normally, when something's canceled, that's it. But they decided to go back into that cliffhanger and the resolution of the cliffhanger in Dark Horizon and turn that novel into a movie. And that first movie spawned 4 more movies, one every year, seemingly. We had Body and Soul in 1995, Millennium in 1996, The Enemy Within, also in 1996, and the final Alien Nation movie that they treated as a proper series finale, The Udara Legacy, in 1997. Kenneth Johnson, the man responsible for bringing Alien Nation to the TV, was responsible for all 5 movies. 20th Century Fox did release all of the series on DVD in 2006. The films that followed the series were released in 2007 at Best Buy and in 2008 worldwide. And now, here in 2024, you can stream the entire series and the movies on Prime Video, Apple TV Plus, and the like for a nominal fee. A franchise like Alien Nation doesn't stay gone for long. In 2009, Sci-Fi announced that they were developing a new reboot of the series. Firefly and Angel's Tim Minear was going to be at the helm of that series, but in 2014 it was reported that the series was canceled by the network in favor of paranormal reality shows, professional wrestling, and whatever Resident Alien is. 1 year later in 2015, it was reported that a remake of the series was again in the works, with Art Markham and Mark Holloway, best known for Iron Man and Punisher Warzone, writing. 9 years later, that's all the information we have. As for the cast, not many people went on to do anything outside of this. I believe Gary Graham did go into Robot Jox. Lord Woodland did get cast on some daytime dramas, but not much else came of this. This is classic science fiction. It takes place, as we like to say, 20 minutes into the future, next Sunday AD. It explores things like what it means to be human, what it means to be a stranger in a strange land, and how does one truly adapt to being a newcomer. There you have it, Alien Nation, a show that was, by all accounts, way ahead of its time. It had everything from cop drama to family drama to social drama. A lesson was learned by everyone. Were it not for 5 movies and a change in leadership over at Fox, this would have just become another thing on TV. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can always go to our website at itwasathingontv.com, listen to the 497 episodes that preceded this one. In addition to all of that, we've got bonuses, minisodes, live shows, extended versions, instant reactions, delayed reactions. We're also on all social media. Don't forget to look us up at It Was a Thing on TV, except for Facebook. We are at It Was a Thing on TV podcast, and at Mastodon at It Was a Thing on TV at tvwatch.party. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever fine podcasts can be streamed. Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, iHeart, Audible, Podbean, all of our indie friends. Look for us. We're there. And that includes YouTube, where you can like and subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Chico, what's coming up on the podcast next week?
We have number 499, which is perhaps one of the biggest things we've ever talked about. And then there's the one after that, where we will revisit an old favorite. And we will give it the proper treatment that it rightfully deserves. Because this was actually one of the first shows we covered. Ever since then, we've learned a few things about this show. And we want to share that with y'all as we celebrate number 500. But that's not all.
We got a special surprise It Was a Thing on TV Presents coming up. We won't tell you what it's about, but this is going to be unique. It's about something that we've discussed in the past on this show. And we find this subject very grating on us. So we're going to go over this thing and give it the bashing it deserves. And you'll find out all about those things next week, right here. It Was a Thing on TV, as we celebrate our 500th episode of this very fine podcast. Have a good rest of your week. I'm Greg. That's Chico. That's Mike. And we will see you for the next 2 episodes as we approach 500 right here. It Was a Thing on TV. See you soon. Wow!
Money, 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 money.
Money out, ready.